The morning sun glared off the endless blue of the Pacific, calm and deceptive, masking the danger that lay beyond the horizon. Somewhere out there, Japanese fighters patrolled the skies, hunting for stragglers and easy targets. Lieutenant Jack Reynolds, a 23-year-old pilot from Kansas, tightened his grip on the controls of his Grumman F-6F Hellcat. The ocean below shimmered like glass, but Jack's instincts told him trouble was coming. His squadron had taken off hours earlier from the USS Essex, heading for a strike deep into enemy-held territory. What began as a simple escort mission quickly turned into chaos. The sky erupted with enemy aircraft, tracers streaking across the clouds, engines roaring, explosions echoing through the heavens. Jack's wingman was gone, hit and spiraling toward the ocean. The radio crackled with static and panicked voices. The order came, disengage and return to base. But Jack couldn't. His fuel was low, his compass damaged, and the smoke rising from his wing told him he was flying on borrowed time. He pushed the throttle and prayed the engine would hold. Minutes later, it didn't. The propeller coughed, then stopped, the Hellcat jerking violently as silence swallowed the cockpit. Jack's heart pounded. Below him, only the endless ocean waited. He pulled the canopy release, felt the rush of wind, and leapt into the sky. The parachute snapped open just as his plane vanished into the waves below. Hanging between heaven and hell, Jack watched the wreckage disappear. He hit the water hard, gasping as the cold struck him. Alone, surrounded by nothing but sea and sky, the realization hit him. He was behind enemy lines, hundreds of miles from any rescue. Hours passed. The sun sank low, the horizon burning orange. Sharks circled nearby, drawn by the faint scent of fuel and fear. Jack clung to his life raft, scanning the horizon for any sign of help. None came. He thought about home, about his father's farm, the smell of wheat fields after rain, his mother's voice calling him for supper. He thought about the promise he made to his younger brother before he shipped out. "I'll come back, no matter what." As night fell, the temperature dropped sharply. Jack shivered, exhaustion setting in. His radio was dead, his rations minimal, but he wasn't ready to die. The next morning, the sound of distant engines snapped him awake. He looked up, two silhouettes against the rising sun. But as they drew closer, his hope turned to dread. They were Japanese patrol planes. He ducked low in his raft, heart racing. The plane circled once, twice, then peeled away. They hadn't seen him, or maybe they had, and were calling for reinforcements. Jack didn't wait to find out. He began paddling toward what he thought was west, using the sun as his guide. The hours bled together. Hunger gnawed at him. Thirst burned his throat. He sang to himself to stay awake, old songs from home, hymns from church, anything to keep his mind sharp. On the third day, land appeared, a faint outline on the horizon. With the last of his strength, Jack paddled toward it. As the waves pushed him closer, he saw palm trees, sand, and smoke, signs of life. But as he reached the shore, exhaustion overcame him. He collapsed face first into the sand, unaware that he had just landed on an island occupied by Japanese forces. When he awoke, he was surrounded. Two Japanese soldiers stood over him, rifles pointed at his chest. He froze, heart pounding. They shouted commands he didn't understand. One kicked his raft aside, the other motioned for him to stand. His legs wobbled as they pushed him toward a makeshift camp deeper inland. Captured, unarmed, and isolated, Jack faced a new kind of war, one fought not with bullets, but with willpower. In the camp, he was beaten, interrogated, and starved. But he refused to give them what they wanted. He knew what surrender meant, not just for him, but for every American fighting across the Pacific. The Japanese officers called him stubborn, foolish, even suicidal. Jack called it loyalty. Every night, as he stared through the bars of his bamboo cell, he thought of his squadron, of the flag painted on his Hellcat's wing, of the men who never made it home. He swore he wouldn't die here, not like this. Weeks passed. Jack's body weakened, but his mind sharpened. He memorized guard rotations, studied escape routes, and waited for his moment. Then, one stormy night, that moment came. Rain lashed the island, thunder shook the sky, and visibility was near zero. Using a piece of metal he'd hidden for weeks, he pried open the bamboo bars. His hands bled as he crawled out, the mud sucking at his feet. He didn't look back. The jungle was dense, the terrain treacherous, but he moved fast, guided only by flashes of lightning and instinct. Behind him, alarms blared. The guards had discovered his escape. Bullets cracked through the rain, but Jack kept running. He stumbled, fell, got back up. Every step forward was a victory, every breath a defiance of the odds. By dawn, he reached the shoreline once again. There, half buried in the sand, lay the wreckage of an old fishing boat. He dragged it into the surf, praying it would float. Somehow, it did. With the trembling hands, he tore fabric from his clothes and fashioned a crude sail. The storm carried him away from the island, away from captivity, toward the unknown. He didn't know where he was going, but he knew one thing. He was free again, and as long as he breathed, the war was not over.
The small fishing boat creaked as it drifted through the restless Pacific. Jack's clothes were soaked, his lips cracked from thirst, and his hands blistered from rowing. The ocean was silent now, deceptively calm, stretching endlessly in every direction. He had no compass, no supplies, and barely enough strength to stay conscious. But Jack Reynolds wasn't the kind of man who gave up. Somewhere out there, beyond the horizon, was home. The war had taken everything from him. His friends, his freedom, his aircraft, but not his will to fight. Every sunrise reminded him that as long as he was alive, there was still a chance. 3 days passed. His body ached, his mind drifted between exhaustion and hallucination. Sometimes he thought he saw the silhouette of a ship, sometimes the faint hum of engines. Each time, it was only the sea playing tricks. He laughed to himself in the silence, thinking about how absurd it was that a Kansas farm boy was now alone in the largest ocean on Earth, defying one of the most powerful navies in history. But deep inside, he knew he wasn't just surviving. He was representing every American who refused to bow. On the 5th day, a storm approached again. The waves rose higher, the wind howled like an animal, and the sky turned black. The makeshift boat tossed violently, threatening to flip. Jack clung to the sides, praying, cursing, shouting at the storm to do its worst. Lightning split the sky, and in that brief flash, he saw it. A massive shape on the horizon, distant but real. It was a ship. He waved frantically, screaming into the wind, but the sea swallowed his voice. Then another flash of lightning revealed the markings. His heart skipped. It was an American destroyer. Desperation turned into adrenaline. He tore his shirt, waved it wildly above his head. Minutes felt like hours until the destroyer began to turn. Searchlights swept across the waves, and then, at last, one beam landed on him. A voice echoed through the storm. "We've got a man in the water!" The sound of those words was the most beautiful thing Jack had ever heard. Strong arms pulled him aboard, and as his soaked, trembling body hit the deck, he finally let go. The world spun, the noise faded, and everything went dark. When he awoke, it was daylight. The soft hum of engines filled the air, and for the first time in weeks, he smelled real coffee. A Navy medic leaned over him, smiling. "You're one lucky son of a gun," the medic said. "You were adrift for almost a week." Jack tried to speak, but his throat was dry. The words barely came out. "Where am I?" "Aboard the USS Abner Reed. You're safe, Lieutenant." Safe. The word hit him like a wave. He turned his head and saw the stars and stripes fluttering in the wind above the deck. For the first time since his crash, he felt the weight lift from his chest. He was home again, maybe not in Kansas, but among his own. News of his survival spread quickly through the fleet. The story of the pilot who escaped capture, survived alone, and made it back alive became a symbol of defiance and courage. Commanders spoke his name in briefings, young pilots whispered it in ready rooms. To them, Jack Reynolds wasn't just a man, he was proof that no matter how dire the situation, Americans never surrendered. But Jack never saw himself as a hero. He spent his recovery days quietly looking out over the endless sea from the ship's deck. He thought of the friends he'd lost, the men who never came back, and the skies that had once echoed with gunfire and bravery. When he finally returned home months later, the war was still raging, but he was determined to go back. He rejoined his squadron, this time not just as another pilot, but as a living reminder of what American spirit meant. During his first mission back, as he climbed into his new Hellcat, one of the younger crewmen asked, "Lieutenant, weren't you scared? Out there, alone?" Jack smiled faintly. "Of course I was scared. But fear's just part of flying. What matters is what you do with it." He took off into the sky, the engines roaring beneath him, the same vast Pacific stretching below. To some he was a survivor, to others a legend, but to himself he was simply a pilot doing his duty. As the war dragged on, stories like his became beacons of hope, testaments to grit, faith, and the indomitable will of those who refused to break. Long after the guns fell silent and the oceans grew calm again, the story of Jack Reynolds lived on in the hearts of those who remembered what it took to win. Because sometimes, victory isn't about how many enemies you defeat, but how fiercely you fight when the world tells you it's over. And somewhere, across the Pacific, under those same endless skies, the echoes of his courage still linger. A quiet promise that no American ever truly fights alone.